Let's set up a research pane to gather criteria which we'll use to pull down information from the web. As we manage our inventory, there'll be times where we want to do research on the vintage item or antique that we're looking to sell. It would be quite useful to create embedded search functionality to retrieve information from the web. Later, we can tie this search functionality to directly feed from the data in our database. Let's go ahead and drag over a group box control into the top panel. Adjust the size so it's a little bit bigger. Let's give it a name. In the group box text property, replace the text with the word search. Let's change the name of the group box to group box search. This particular group box will group together all the controls that are related to search. That includes adding the box for the user to type in search information, as well as a text box to capture the URL. We'll also be adding 2 radio buttons to vary the search, so at times we'll want to search on the web directly, and at other times we may want to search Wikipedia. Let's go ahead and drag over a text box. From the All Windows Forms tab, select the text box control. Drag this over to your form and adjust the size so it's a bit bigger. Let's change the name to text box search research. Now let's drag over 2 radio buttons. From your toolbox, drag over 2 radio buttons to sit underneath the search box. Let's configure the properties for these radio buttons. For the radio button on the right, change the name to Radio Button Wiki. Change the text property to Read Wiki. For the radio button on the left, change the text to Read Live. And for the name, change it to be Radio Button Live. By toggling these 2 buttons, the user can vary between searching on the web or searching Wikipedia. By default, we'll configure this search to search for the web. For the Radio Button Live, select the check property to be true. Now let's drag over a label control. Let's give it a name, label URL, and change the text property to be address. And lastly, we'll need to drag over a text box control to capture the URL itself. Drag over a text box control and place it next to the address control. Notice the visual alignment properties that Visual Studio provides for you to allow you to align either the top or bottom of your controls or the left and right properties of your control in relation to other controls. This is a useful feature for making sure that your layout looks consistent to the user. Let's name this text box Address. Now, considering that this will be capturing the URL for the website that we're visiting, wouldn't it be nice for it to remember all the URLs of the websites that you've recently visited and offer autocomplete options as an Internet Explorer does? Let's go ahead and configure that. We can do this with the autocomplete mode option. In your Properties window, select the autocomplete mode. By default, it will be none. Let's choose Suggest. Once we choose Suggest, we'll have to give it some kind of inventory or database to choose from. In this case, we're going to set the autocomplete source property to set the data source for the suggestions. We have several options here. We can specify the file system, which will allow us to peruse the file system on the local machine to set this data to a particular file path. We have the history list that will inventory the entire history of websites we visited, depending on the settings we have in IE, to indicate how many days of history we'll save. We have the recently used list, which will navigate to the pages that we've last seen. We have all URL, which takes both the recently used list and the history list and combines them together into a single data source. The All System Sources option allows us to browse both URLs and the file system as the source. This will be the default value if we choose autocomplete mode to anything other than the default. The file system directories only goes through directories, and it doesn't include file names as the data source. And also notice you can actually set your own custom source to prompt the user with suggestions from commonly used data items. This could come from a database, an XML file, or any other source. Let's go ahead and set ARC suggestion to be all URLs. That way, when the user starts typing, they'll have suggestions to map to any URL that's already been loaded onto the system. Now let's drag over a button. This will actually set the URL into the web browser control, which we will be adding momentarily. Drag over a button control and place it next to the address control. Let's configure the button. Change the text property to read Go. Change the name of the button to be Button Go. Let's go ahead and change the for color to be Button Highlight. And now, let's configure the image property. Select Image and select the ellipses. Here we have the ability to manage resources. We could use an existing project resource file should we have one, or we can browse directly into the local resources database and import an asset from the local resources. In this case, we'll go ahead and browse to the item that we wish to work with. Select the Import button. The File dialog box will open. In the Icons folder, select the next image. This is actually an animated GIF. Visual Studio buttons allow you to use animated GIFs as your button images and will actually animate them when the project runs. Select Open to open up the GIF. As you can see in the preview pane, it previews the animation for you, and then you can select OK. Now we have a Go button to navigate to a custom URL based on suggestions that our text box provides.